So this morning, reading from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 8. And we're actually doing 77, but 78 is the one with the purport, so there's 78 on the board. And it's not in Bengali, it's actually from the Bhagavatam in the Sanskrit, but obviously they're quoting from the Bhagavatam in this part of the book. All right, so it's verse 78 is on the board, but what I'll do, obviously, I'll read the verse and translation to 77 first, and we'll move on to this verse. So 77 here. Translation. Ramananda Roy continued, O Brahmana, what pious activities did Nanda Maharaj perform by which he received the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna as his son? And what pious activities did Mother Yashoda perform that made the absolute Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna call her mother and suck her breasts? So now moving swiftly on to the other verse here. Translation. The favour Mother Yashoda obtained from Sri Krishna, the bestower of liberation, was never obtained even by Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva, nor even by the goddess of fortune, who always remains on the chest of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. Okay, the purport's quite a short one, but there's a longer purport which is mentioned actually in this purport itself, which I will be reading from. This is a statement from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 9, 20. Krishna agreed to be bound by Mother Yashoda after she had given up trying to bind Krishna with ropes. This is another appreciation made by Shukadeva Goswami in his narration of the pastimes of Krishna before Maharaj Parikshit. Om Jnanam Tridam Dasya Janangana Shalakaya Taksho Om Minitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam He Krishna Kuruna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopikanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tata Kanchana Gaurangi Vadevandavanishvare Vishabhanustate Devi Panamami Hari Priye Vanta Kalpa Tarubhascha Kripo Simbudevacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadine Nivasesha Shunyavadi Prasachade Satadine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nechananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Sivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The favour Mother Yashoda obtained from Sri Krishna, the bestower of liberation, was never obtained even by Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva, even by the goddess of fortune, who always remains on the chest of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. So just for context, as most of you will already know anyway, so here in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya is in South India and he's talking to Ramananda Roy, the great governor. And he began his conversation with Ramananda Roy, something they both relished. Starting off the cultural, being a governor, Ramananda Roy would have been very learned in all these things and a great Vaishnava. So first of all, Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy were talking about Varnashram and Dharma and discipline and law and things like that. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being who he was, wanted to go a bit deeper. And he was asking Ramananda Roy to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And Ramananda Roy reciprocated, and they were both able to speak on the intimate pastimes of Lord Krishna ultimately, Yashoda, the gopis, and so forth. So obviously at this point, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, they're talking about Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, and what special souls, or actually we learn more, they're not just souls actually, but we learn what special individuals they are. So this is the context of the verse. So in Madhya Lila itself, it's actually a quote from the Bhagavatam 10:9-20. So I cheated a bit because that was quite a short purport, I thought. So I actually looked at the purport that Prabhupada wrote for that verse in the Bhagavatam, 10.9.20. So let's read that. Prabhupada writes, "This is a comparative study between Mother Yashoda and other devotees of the Lord, as stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila 5.142. The only Supreme Master is Krishna, and all others are his servants. Krishna has the transcendental quality of Vitya Vatsyata, becoming subordinate to his servant. Now, everyone is Vitya, and although Krishna has the quality of becoming subordinate, the position of Mother Yashoda is the greatest. Lord Brahma is Vitya, a servant of Krishna, and he is Adikavi, the original creator of this universe. Nevertheless, even he could not obtain such mercy as Mother Yashoda. As for Lord Shiva, he is the topmost Vaishnava. What to speak of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, is the Lord's constant companion in service. But even she could not get such mercy. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit was surprised. Of course, now we're talking about the conversation. Sukadeva Goswami talked to Maharaj Parikshit, the Bhagavatam, of course. And Maharaj Parikshit, when he heard about Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, he was surprised, thinking, what did Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj do in their previous lives by which they got such a great opportunity? The opportunity to be affectionate, the affectionate father and mother of Krishna. Of course, Yashoda did not have to earn her position. Yashoda, of course, and Nanda as well, of course, Yashoda naturally acts in such an exalted position in loving affairs. She is therefore a Nitya Siddha devotee, an expansion of Krishna's Lidini potency. His potency to enjoy transcendental bliss through expansions who are special devotees. So in other words, Yashoda and of course Nanda Maharaj are not sadhana siddhas. So what sadhana siddhi means? Those who have performed devotional service by their own endeavour, their own austerities, their own surrender, and then have obtained this. They have to work at it, basically. However, Yashoda, for example, is basically part of Krishna's immediate pastime, is part of his early expansions, as it were. Therefore, Nitya Siddha, they do not fall down. They are always on the spiritual platform. Of course, here we have a situation where she's on the earth with Krishna 5,000 years ago. We'll talk a bit about that later, because obviously from time to time Krishna descends his pastimes, manifests his transcendental pastimes that are always going on in the spiritual world, but sometimes they manifest in this world. Does he go alone? Krishna, yes, he's the origin of all things, but he's never alone in the spiritual world, even though he's the origin of everything. Which is difficult for us to understand. It's beyond the laws of physics. He is everything, in a sense, because he's the origin of everything. And yet, there's other versions, I suppose, so that Krishna is not alone. So he can have these rasas, these relationships, whether they're, which we'll get into. But obviously in this context, it is to do with parental, the love, of the experience of being loved by superiors, parents. And why not? It doesn't always have to be awe and reverence, as it is in Vaikuntha planets. The relationship between devotees and the Narayan forms in Vaikuntha is based on Lakshmi and Narayan, is based on awe and reverence. Kingly, the God is a king, God is great, God has a throne, you bow down to him. But here, something else is happening here in the spiritual world, in Goloka Vrindavan, that original planet in the spiritual sky, where actually Krishna can even be a lover and a subordinate. And which is something, in other words, it's not that they had awe and reverence for Krishna, but did they have love for Krishna? Oh yes, higher actually than anything that awe and reverence could actually produce. There are two categories of devotees in the spiritual world, Nitya Siddhas and Sadhana Siddhas. I think we mentioned that. Nitya Siddhas are the eternal associates of Krishna. They originate from the personal body of Krishna. This obviously applies to Nanda and Yashoda. They can never fall down from their exalted status. They are who they are. Just like Krishna, they are supremely pure. They are eternally in prema bhakti. So, as we can probably gather by now, they are by no means normal souls. No, we are nitya baddhas. I remember Nietzsche's Siddhas, because I think Siddha as in mystic powers. Baddhas, Nietzsche Baddhas, I think, well, I'm bad, so I'm a Nietzsche Baddha. We're the marginal energy, which means we can fall down. Unlike Nietzsche Siddhas, we can fall down, and evidently we have fallen down. We have misused our independence, but at least we have independence. And so therefore, we will never actually be on the same level as Nanda and Yashoda, because they never have fallen down. We have to basically earn our way. But once we've earned our way back, no matter how long it takes, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's 1,000,000 years, I hope it's not that long, but it could well be in my case, or whatever it is, when you're there, it's not that Krishna treats you as an inferior. Oh, you went to the material world, I don't want to know you. It's not like that. Why? Because, as we understand from Gopi Lila, there's actually a rasin separation as well. So Krishna would embrace us and, okay, don't worry about that bit. That happened to you in the material world. You've learnt your lesson. And everything would, there's no discrimination in the material world. There is spiritual world. The only point is that you serve Krishna in different ways, and he's at the centre. That's the rule. But everything else is yes, there's different levels of intimacy with Krishna as well within the spiritual realm. But it's not that you're going to be envious of anyone. You'll just be self-satisfied in your sarup. But let me carry on, because that's getting a bit deep for me. So going back to the verse, so we have Maharaj Parikshit here, who is a little bit puzzled actually. So he asks Sukadeva Goswami, and of course that point is recounted by Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy. So he was asking, what penance did they perform? What extraordinary devotion did they do to get such an exalted position? Now we already know the answer to that. But of course we learn, whenever Krishna appears on the earth, he superficially needs a father and mother. If he's going to be born as a baby, then you need to have a father and mother. Well, actually, he doesn't need, in one sense, but he chooses to have. Krishna doesn't need a father and mother. He could just look after himself, and we know that by what happened to some of the demons, Trinavat demon and so forth, and Putana and everything else. However, he superficially needs a father and mother. Now, Drona and Dara are his eternal father and mother, but they appeared on earth before Krishna 5,000 years ago by the names of Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. So the answer to the question is, who were they in their previous lives? They were actually in the spiritual world, and their original names are Drona and Dara, the eternal father and mother. At least that's my understanding. But they had the names of Nanda and Yashoda, because that's obviously they were born themselves in India 5,000 years ago, and they were given those names. But actually they were Drona and Dara. We read in the Bhagavatam 10.8.50. This is very much connected here. When Lord Brahma says, yes, let it be so. The most fortunate Drona, who was equal to Bhagavan, appeared in Vrindavan as the most famous Nanda Maharaj. And his wife, Dara, appeared as Mother Yashoda. There was some etiquette, interestingly enough, there was some etiquette showed here. What was Lord Brahma got to do with it? And the answer is, just like you have Vishnu avatars, Parashuram and Lord Ram, when they enter into this material world, they actually go through Vishnu, they go through Garbhodakshai Vishnu. And so they kind of had to consult with Lord Brahma, so we're going to take birth now in the earth. And of course, Lord Brahma would not refuse, but it's like an etiquette, if you like. It's not that they became Krishna's parents after seeking permission from Lord Brahma, but they, in fact, are the eternal father and mother of Krishna. So it's not a case of seeking permission from Lord Brahma. It's a case of, okay, we'll just let Brahma know that we're going to take birth now. And Lord Brahma says, yeah, great. Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj eternally live with Krishna in the spiritual world. Whenever Krishna descends, let's have a look. Now then, of course, he, just like, for example, in terms of the Panchatattva in Lord Chaitanya, he doesn't come alone. Of course, he could all do these things alone. Krishna could do everything he wanted to alone. He could annihilate the miscreants and re-establish the principles of religion on his own. He has that power, but he chooses not to. There's more enjoyment when you share it with your friends and with your family members and your parents and your lovers. There's more enjoyment. Do you know what I mean by that? There was once when I felt I was in a very beautiful place. I can't remember what it was now. Anyway, it was a nice view, whatever it was, English countryside somewhere. It was a really nice view. I thought, that's really nice. But I didn't have my phone with me, which is unusual actually. But I didn't have so I couldn't take a picture. Sometimes people take pictures of things, they share it on Facebook or they share it with their friends. Why? Because there's an enjoyment about sharing things. That's why social media is so popular. People enjoy sharing things. And I enjoyed that view, but I felt I wanted to share that with somebody. You know what I mean? There's more. I thought if someone was with me, we could point, oh, look at that over there, that mountain, and that. Oh, look, there's a bird. Isn't that beautiful? So there's there's some enjoyment about sharing things with others, sharing with family members, sharing with lovers, etc., etc. And we all understand that, and that's on this level. But that ras of, if you like, of sharing is actually manifest in its original form in the spiritual world. So there you go. Now, for example, we also see Srimati Radharani, an eternal consort of Krishna, who appears in Vrindavan for Krishna's pleasure. So we can understand Yashoda and Nanda are already the parents of Krishna, but play the role of the father and mother in the material world, like that. Now, what I wanted to also touch on, which I think is quite interesting, is I touched on this earlier, but I thought I'd come back to it at the right point. There's a difference, but there's a small difference between Goloka and Gokula. Goloka Vrindavan and Gokul. One is the eternal, original, manifest in the spiritual world, as we were mentioning. Then there's the version that goes via Lord Brahma, as I mentioned, into the material world. But it's a spiritual world manifest in the material world, of course, which is the Vrindavan and Gokula. They're both spiritual, but there's small differences. And it's understood that one of the differences is that there are no demons in Goloka, but there are in Gokula. Why? Well, Krishna came to fight the demons, did he not? But you can't fight demons in Goloka. Why? Why can't you fight demons in the original spiritual world? There are no demons. The demons can't get in there. They're protected by the tridents and the effulgence of the planet. Absolutely, they can't get in there. They can't get in there. So Krishna has, so therefore there are certain things Krishna can do in the material world that he can't actually do in the spiritual world. That's one of the reasons why he descends. It's another Leela of his, actually, where he can fight. And Krishna enjoys fighting, and he always wins. He cannot lose a fight because he's the Lord. He's not going to lose. And if he does, if he finds it difficult, if he's doing it on purpose. Like he could fight a demon like Hiranyakashipu in the form of Lord Nrsingadev, or in the form of Ram. He can fight Ravana, and he can make it last days. These fights were very long. Or between Vraha and Hiranyaksha, the Vraha, the boar incarnation. These fights, these scraps that Krishna had, actually lasted a really long time by our calculation. He could have done it immediately. But why? But Krishna actually chooses to actually kind of like lengthen it out a bit. Because there's enjoyment, especially men will probably understand it more than ladies, I think. But it's entertainment. Where someone's watching amateur wrestling or a boxing match, and there's a big build-up between Mike Tyson and Frank Bruno or whoever. I don't know who. That's out of date. But anyway, I've been here too long. But whoever's the big heavyweight boxers these days. And here we are, and we're going to now interview Mike Tyson, who's going to say, there's a whole. It's entertainment, basically. Now, you imagine if so many millions of dollars are invested in these things as well. But you imagine if the fight lasted like 5 seconds. Oh, that's a bit disappointing, actually. That people might think. So they think, I wish it lasted a bit longer, because I got my money's worth, or I bought a ticket for this, or I. Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Shri Gurnitai ki jai. So Krishna enjoys fighting, which he can't do in the spiritual world, therefore he does it manifest in one of the universes, and he did this 5,000 years ago. But just like a professional boxing match, if it's slightly drawn out, then it gets a bit more dramatic license. It's more like a Hollywood movie. If the bad guy fights the good guy, and it happens within the first 5 minutes of the movie, then the rest of the movie is almost redundant. So it's always left at the end. And you find that with a lot of past, like the Ramayana, for example, even Mahabharata, where it's this build-up to the Kurukshetra war, and Krishna lets his devotees enact their pastimes, and he helps them. He enjoys working with others, I think is probably the best way to put it. Of course, Arjuna, in the Mahabharata, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, was Krishna's friend, which is another type of ras when compared with parental love. Certainly a different type of... So there's neutrality, different relationships. The Nectar of Devotion explains, does it not, that there's different types of relationships with Krishna, which are all spiritual, but are slightly different. So you've got a sense of oneness, but you've also got variety in the spiritual world, just as you have variety in this material world. Variety that we experience in this world originates from the variety in the spiritual world. When you think about it, because that is the basis actually of creation. The idea that if you have, that's actually an argument against impersonalism, i.e., you can't get something out of nothing, quite literally. If the absolute truth was nothing more than the Brahmajyoti, the effulgence of the Lord, it was just this. If it was just that, there was nothingness. And then where would that impetus? Where would Lord Brahma get that impetus from, that information from, to create so many beautiful things, so many views or flowers or whatever it may be that he creates? He actually gets it from Krishna. Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami, one of the oldest prayers, the original prayer actually in this universe, where Lord Brahma is praying to Govinda, Lord Govinda, the bestower of the cows, the caretaker of the cows. So Lord Brahma got this vision of the spiritual world, and based on that, he created this world. It's not that he just saw the effulgence and thought, okay, there's nothing, so I'll create nothing. Life comes from life, as it were, like that. So, in other words, even in this world, there are different parental type relationships where we understand, not to the degree, of course, that the prema that exists between Mother Yashoda and baby Krishna. That is highest, but we have an understanding of it. I'll give you a very good example. One of the highest levels of love in this material world, we can just try to understand some of Krishna Lila, is understanding that the love between a mother and her child is actually quite very high, as high as you can get really in this material world. Because there's all kinds of stories that you hear, some of them very sad stories, but nevertheless kind of heart-wrenching stories, where there's this true story of this mother and the child. They were trapped somewhere, and to survive, obviously any food that the mother got she gave to the child, to the point where she was starving. But the main thing, that her existence, her priority was the child. It was completely selfless service. There's another example of the strength of motherhood, or the strength of character of motherhood. Again, a true story. I think it happened in America, where there was a mother with a tiny little baby toddler. I think the toddler must have been about, I don't know how old they are when they walk. I don't know this thing, about one, or I don't know what it is. But just old enough to walk, got out the pram, and then went underneath this, I think it was a car, a small car, but went under the car, and the baby, I think, knocked its head on kind of the exhaust underneath, and basically passed out underneath the car. So what do you do? Naturally, she tried to reach up. She couldn't reach the car. It was quite a small car. So a baby somehow could get underneath it. And you could get your hand there, but you couldn't quite reach the baby. And the baby wasn't moving. So some men came by. They tried to help. And the mother was crying, as you can imagine. It was by a busy main road. Not exactly, what can you do? Call the police, call the fire, But these men came by, they tried to help. They said, oh, no, what we'll do, we'll try and lift the car. We're all men here. We'll try the macho thing. So 2 men, or 3 men actually, took one side of the car and started lifting it up. See, the idea is that then the mother could grab the baby. And she was prepared to do that, even though it was unstable. So they did that. Oh, they couldn't lift it. They said, sorry, we tried, but, we're not strong enough. Maybe which is this was before there was mobile phones, so they had to walk a mile to find a phone to call the fire brigade. So time went by, and she was left there by herself. And you know what she did? She was so desperate to get the job, she lifted the car single-handedly with one hand like that and lifted it on, so the car tipped on its side. And she did that because of the love of motherhood. There was something instinctive that she had that was stronger than what these physically stronger men had, 3 men. She was stronger than those 3 men put together and was able to lift this car on its side and therefore retrieve the child. Imagine it, even a man couldn't do that. So you get the idea of this ras, if you like, this in the material world between a mother and a child is a very high kind of love by material standards. What to speak of the love between Krishna and Mother Yashoda? Of course, there's other relationships like servitude, as I mentioned, where there's reverence between Krishna and where one is a subordinate. That's a ras, it's okay. Perhaps younger friends of Krishna, Krishna may even fight and bully you a little bit if you're a cowherd boy. There's some sense of, but then there's fraternity, intimate friendship. So Arjuna had this. Cowherd, or the Gopas had this with Krishna. Then, of course, higher than that, or deeper than that, is parentalhood, as we know. And, of course, Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj had this. Now, deeper than that even is conjugal love. Lover, as in between a male and female, or the Gopis and Radharani and Krishna. But nevertheless, this parentalhood is something which is very important and very deep. So what I wanted to do in the final section of this class is just to read a little bit about what the Nectar of Devotion tells us about this ras of parentalhood between Krishna. So just bear with me a second. Make sure I've got it there. Let's have a look. So it reads from chapter 43 in the Nectar of Devotion. When ecstatic love develops in the relationship of parentalhood and becomes steadily established, the relationship is called Vatsalya Ras. The exhibition of this standard of devotional service can be found in the dealings of Krishna with his devotees who represent themselves as superior personalities like father, mother, but also teacher. Sandipani Muni was also a teacher of Lord Krishna and Balaram in Ujjain, in Madhya Pradesh. So, of course, again, that is a kind of a leela. And when Krishna and Balaram were old enough to go to Gurukul in Ujjain, Sandipani Muni, of course, would take them away from their parents. Actually, during that, it was like a boarding school, and there'd be an intimate relationship. But of course, Sandipani Muni was their superior. He was actually their superior, and actually, Sandipani Muni was actually a great devotee of Lord Shiva. In fact, if you go to Ujjain, you actually go to this temple where they say there's a Shiva lingam there, which was worshipped by Sandipani Muni himself. But so therefore, there was a kind of what we call a yoga maya between those in a senior position to Krishna. Yoga maya, in other words, it's illusion. But it's Krishna's illusion, it's transcendental illusion, which is different from the Maya that I'm in. I think I'm the body, therefore I'm in Maya. It's not that so Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj are not in that type of Maya. They're in a yoga Maya. What that means is that when they're, or in terms of Sandipani Muni, where he's the teacher, in other words, it's not that they're constantly aware that this is God. They're constantly aware that this is our son and we love him to bits, you see. And if they're reminded too much, this is God, this is God, this is God, this is God, it's like it takes something, then the awe and reverence would come into the equation. So in order for that parentalhood ras to manifest, there's a little bit of tinge of yoga maya there. But so that's interesting, but let's learn on. Learned scholars have described the impetuses of parental love for Krishna existing in the elderly personalities who are in relationship with him as follows. The supreme personality of Godhead, whose bodily complexion is just like a bluish, new-grown lotus flower, whose body is very delicate and whose lotus eyes are surrounded by scattered hair as black as bees, was walking on the streets of Vrindavan when Mother Yashoda, the beloved wife of Nanda Maharaj, saw him. Immediately the milk began to flow from her breasts. Some specific provocations for parental love of Krishna are listed has his blackish bodily hue, which is very attractive and pleasing to see. His all-auspicious bodily features, his mildness, his pleasing words, his simplicity, his shyness, his humility, his constant readiness to offer respect to the elderly, and his charity. All of these qualities are considered ecstatic provocations for parental love. That's interesting. So these are the things that parents as a whole are always biased in favour of their children. I can tell you so many stories, but I won't bore you. Actually, I'll just bore you with one. I never got on with my physics teacher at school. And the irony was I got on well with my previous physics teacher. They went upper class, and I did get on with the new one for some reason. I don't know what it was, but I think I was in the wrong. I wasn't respectful or something. Anyway, so when it came to parents' evening, the physics teacher kind of got it. Oh, your son, he's all right when he puts his mind to it, but he's messing around too much. And it was a negative. It was one of those parents' evening that you kind of have to hide under the bed when your mum and dad come home. But then my mum told me, actually, everyone was nice apart from that physics teacher. And you know what I did? I was expecting my mum to give me a whack round the head for messing around in physics. She said, I gave him a piece of my mind. How dare he talk about my son like that? Wow, She was protective. She was biased. I probably did deserve a whack round the head. But no, my son can do no wrong. It actually can be a problem because sometimes tough love is needed when bringing up children. Sometimes you need to discipline them. But nevertheless, on the whole, parents are very much biased in favour of their children. Of course, it's natural, of course. And of course, this is also the case. But what the parents really like when the children is attractive, sweet, simple, shy, humble, when they give respect to the elderly, these are the kind of things which really, that is when children really can do no wrong. When they're good children, and they're their children, then basically their parents will do anything for them, even lift a car with one hand, as I mentioned earlier. Once Madhya Yashoda addressed one of her friends. She said, Nanda Maharaj, the leader of the cowherd men, worshipped Lord Vishnu along with me, and as a result of this worship we performed, Krishna has been saved from the clutches of Putana and other demons. And the twin Arjuna trees were, of course, broken due to a strong wind. And although Krishna appeared to have lifted Govardhana hill, I think that Nanda Maharaj actually held the mountain himself, but wanted to give the credit to his son. Otherwise, how could it be possible for this sweet little beautiful boy just to lift a great hill like Govardhan? This kind of parental love is generated in a devotee out of his conviction in love that he himself is superior to Krishna, and that without being taken care of by such a devotee, he could not possibly live. This is a yogamaya, because if you don't have that bit of yogamaya, then parental ras cannot exist. But Krishna chooses to have that. He wants to be looked after. He wants people to serve in that way, basically. However, Yashoda and Nanda, every time that young Krishna in Vrindavan would perform a miracle, beat up the Trinivata demon, for example, who took him right into the sky, and then Krishna just got so heavy that Trinivata came tumbling down and fell on a cart. Or, of course, Putana is one of the first demons that Krishna killed. Well, there's so many actually. There's the Aghasura, the snake demon, and there's so many demons. And Krishna killed them all, but each time, of course, the lifting of Govardhana hill is a good example. But each time, his parents, his transcendental parents, always thought, no, Krishna, maybe Krishna's, I think Nanda Maharaj once said, maybe our son maybe he's one of the demigods, or maybe he's been blessed by the demigods, or maybe because of some puja I performed, or maybe all the gopas, because they were using their sticks, they were helping Krishna. They were helping. In fact, the cowherd boys themselves, was it Madhya Mangala, thought he was doing it with his stick. It's okay, Krishna, I've got this, I can handle this, you can just chill out, have some samosas or something like that. I'm just going to me and the lads will do this. Of course, it was actually Krishna all along, but that was a rasa friendship. But they wanted to have that because there was that sense of awe and reverence that they didn't need for that particular ras. However, if you look at when Krishna was, obviously as Krishna got older in Dwarka city, for example, there's a slightly different ras was going on there. But let me continue. Coming up to the final section of the class, actually. This is still in the Nectar of Devotion. Mother Yashoda's eyes are always engaged in seeing the face of Krishna, and thus they were always filled with tears of love. Her complexion, which resembles a bluish lotus flower, is enhanced in beauty by her dressing herself with many colourful garments, like saris. Let her merciful glance fall on all of us, so that we may be protected from the clutches of Maya, not Yoga Maya, but Maya, and smoothly progress in our devotional service. Also in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, we read there is a following description. This is a nice description, actually. After rising early in the morning, Mother Yashoda first of all offered her breast milk to Krishna, and then she began to chant various mantras for his protection. Again, she has to think that she has to believe that those mantras are needed. Krishna doesn't need protection, but she wanted that relationship with him. That was a type of love. If you want to love someone, you want to serve them. And this was her type of service, thinking, oh, my baby, my toddler needs protection, and I want to protect him. Then she would decorate his forehead very nicely and bind his arms with protective talismans. All of these activities, it is definitely understood that she is the emblem of all maternal affection for Krishna. Oh, I've got to make sure he's wearing this nice. She would dress him when he was young, put wonderful garments on him, flower garland him, protect him, even to the point where other senior gopis in Vrindavan or other mothers in Vrindavan would complain to Yashoda, Krishna's come into our kitchen and stealing our butter. Krishna's bullying my son. Krishna beat my son up when they were playing in the forests. One of my fellow cowherd boys, Krishna was on the winning side, or Balaram was on the winning side, and my son comes home with kind of scabs on his knees or whatever it was. It's Krishna's fault or it's Balaram's fault. Oh no, my Krishna wouldn't do that. It's a bit like the physics teacher again, isn't it? As a mundane example. But, because the love was there. And none of that would be possible if it wasn't for the fact that there are different rases, relationships with Krishna that are permitted in his leelas, in his pastimes. Why? Ultimately because Krishna wants it. Ultimately, Krishna wants it. And it's not for us to speculate on our own ras or sarup with Krishna. I think Prabhupada said many, many times, we do not be like a monkey where we jump artificially in an unqualified state. We should not become sahajas where we're speculating on we're jumping the gun and speculating on our relationship with Krishna. We have to, first, we are Nityabadas after all, and we have to earn our way, and it will happen naturally over like that for our own, and it will happen internally as well. So I'll stop there. Maybe there's time for some comments or questions. And by the way, before you ask the questions, if I don't know the answer, I'll be honest, and I'll throw it out to others for comment. And if they don't know the answer, then Google it later. Okay. Prabhu.
So Krishna's birth mother, Devaki, she had the honor to give birth to Krishna, but what was her deeds, or why was she not able to bring up and devote herself to Krishna? Why was Krishna taken from her?
Okay, of course we all know the story, of course, that Vasudeva and Devaki, of course, I suppose you could say she was the carrier of Krishna, and then of course Krishna manifested in the form of Vishnu in the Kamsa's prison cell. Most of us already know that anyway, about the pastime of Krishna. And then, of course, so Nanda, from the material point of view, Nanda and Yashoda are his foster parents, and his actual birth parents are Vasudeva and Devaki in the prison cell of Kamsa. Although, of course, we also realise it wasn't a normal birth as well. We also know that. So what you're saying, what your question is Vasudeva and Devaki, what is their ras with Krishna, or how come they didn't get to be his parents? Does anyone know the answer to that one? I knew a hard question like that would come. So, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Basically, the answer is that Vasudeva and Devaki, they had a mixed rasa with Krishna. It was not like 100% parental mood. The mix was that they had all in reverence was there. Therefore, it was not sort of pure, unalloyed, motherly or parental mood. So when Krishna appeared, that's why he appeared first of all as a in a form of Vishnu Tattva, just to establish that when I'm going to go now into form of a baby with two hands, so don't worry. So he created that bridge for them. But Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, they had a purely sort of a parental mood towards Krishna. So that's why the difference is there.
That's actually a really helpful answer, thank you. And I've learned something as well this morning. I mean, at the end of the day, like I was saying, Lord Vishnu appeared to Vasudeva and Devaki in Kamsa's prison cell, and automatically, therefore, there's a sense of awe and reverence, because the relationship between Vishnu forms and the jivas is more of a sense, or Narayana forms is more of a sense of awe and reverence. But obviously, as we've just heard, Yashoda and Nanda never actually, as far as I know, they never ever in their lives in this world ever kind of turned around and said, Krishna's actually the same as Vishnu. But Vasudeva and Devaki obviously were aware of that.
But that was Krishna's intention for Devaki to know. That was Krishna's intention to let Devaki mother know that he was Vishnu, because he was also his intention that Yashoda doesn't know that he was God, and therefore he can give all of her mother love to him. So, you know what I'm trying to say? So it's like, because everything is Krishna's plan, everything is up to him, so he knew that Yashoda could give that love to him, and Devaki, so he already put himself into Vishnu's form. So Devaki knew he was already the Supreme Lord. Therefore, she couldn't give the mother love because she already knew he was the Supreme Lord. But Yashoda didn't know. That's why she could give the mother love to him. So why did he have the intention to do that?
One difference, I think, here that's worth mentioning, I mentioned Yogamaya. It was easy. Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj were covered in a kind of a yogamaya so that they could have parental love. Because Vishnu never, in his Vishnu form, was never manifested in front of his parents, whereas Devaki and Vasudeva it was. So there's difference there. But maybe we should move on, and you can maybe speak to Antaranga Prabhu later. Yeah.
Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for your class.
Nice jumper, by the way. What's on there? Is that Arjuna, is it?
Yeah, Arjuna,
a spiritual warrior. There you go. Yeah.
Trying to be
a Kshatriya.
Thank you so much for your class. I just had a question. Obviously, earlier on in the class, you were speaking about the Nitya Siddhas and the Nitya Baddhas. I'm not going to get into that per se, but we understand that like the pure devotees who are here having a perception of this spiritual reality constantly. There's the pastime of Srila Prabhupada, chanting Jai Radha Madhava, being fully absorbed in the spiritual reality. And there's that verse, Narayana Parasarve, which basically is saying that the pure devotee, regardless of whether they're in hellish circumstances or heavenly circumstances, they are always situated in service of the Supreme. So my question is being back to Godhead or going back to Godhead more so a state of consciousness rather than a physical experience? Is it more of a state of consciousness that I'm in the spiritual world regardless of my physicality, based on my devotion?
That's a really interesting point, actually. And just in the way that the Vrindavan in Goloka can manifest in Gokula 5,000 years ago in India, in Vrindavan. In a similar way, the spiritual realization and spiritual is not dependent. It is not, well, let's say it's not it's not connected directly to physicalness. I'll give you an example. If we look at this, I always use this as an example, actually, of paintings around me because I really like them. But this one here by the bell, we see in the bottom right corner, we see the Mat Tattva, we see Mahavishnu there. is in his yellow dhoti, breathing in and out millions of universes. So we're in there somewhere. Then you've got all these other Vaikuntha planets, and above that you've got the huge wall of the lotus flower of Goloka Vrindavan. You can see that with the Krishna Lila and Radha and Krishna in the middle. Now, that's obviously the best of we can understand, but it's not that it's physically up. It's not like we look up like this, with our telescopes, or we go to an observatory and we get such a powerful telescope, it penetrates through the material world. Oh, we can see a Vaikuntha planet. If you look, let's focus in. Oh, there's Krishna. Hi. It doesn't work because that's physical laws. We are operating in this material world in physical laws. Whereas spiritual realization and spiritual status, let's say, and spiritual consciousness is not dependent on... In fact, there's another deep saying which I've heard about, although I can't talk about it with any sense of authority or whatever, but the idea that, in a sense, we never fell down. Let me explain that before I get complaints. It's just we're in the spiritual world. It's just that we're in the illusionary part of that spiritual world. Because everything is spiritual. Just like in that painting, it's the same painting. Included in that painting is the Mat Tattva, which means that's what is not, i.e. it's an illusion. So we are illusioned, but it's only because we think we are. In other words, you can be fully realized even if you're kind of here. It's just that we're not. So therefore, great acharyas like Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and so on and so forth, or Lord Chaitanya, of course, is the best example, where they are manifest, they're visible in this material world, but as far as they're concerned, they're in the spiritual world. So I don't know if that's confusing for me. I might get into trouble for that. But you know what I mean by that. In other words, everything is spiritual if you have the eyes to see it. I think that's probably the best way to describe what I'm trying to say. If you have the consciousness and the eyes to see it, you see Krishna everywhere. And you see that this glasses case or this cup here or whatever, it's all spiritual. If you have that ability to see it as spiritual. It is atoms, it's molecules, it's all the rest of it, it's gross matter. But gross matter is coming from Krishna as well. So that's why in the philosophy you can engage anything in Krishna's service, within reason, of course. You can engage this microphone in Krishna's service, or whatever, or that painting in Krishna's service. So that's one of the differences between Mayavad philosophy and Bhakti, is that we try to look at our situation, and you purify our situation, engage that in Krishna's service. Right? Rather than falsely denying that it's there and performing such severe austerities and living in a cave or whatever it might be and earning it. There is gain, but it's not practical for the Kali Yuga. So given that we're so deep in this kind of this world, we have to engage our surroundings in Krishna. And Prabhupada did that, and he showed his disciples how to do that. Does that make sense to you? I hope I haven't. It's quite a deep subject to actually understand, I find anyway. It's that the spiritual world is not physically up, and hell is not physically down. It's a state of consciousness. Although there may be, if you want to get into fifth canto of cosmology, there's a relationship there. But on the whole, it's about your own consciousness. Like that. Okay, well, final point, I think, from Antaranga Prabhu there.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, you mentioned one point about the whole expansion of Drona and Dara and Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. I've done a bit of research now, and basically there are 3 references from Jiva Goswami's Krishna Sandarbha, Garga Muni's Garga Samhita, and Gopal Champu, which basically explains what is the actual position of Drona and Dara. They're Amsas.
Read on, Prabhu.
Yeah, so
read on.
So it is said, this is from Krishna Sandarbha. Drona and Dara were Amsas, partial expansions of Nanda and Yashoda, and merged into them when they appeared on earth with Krishna. So as you say, it was like a drama performance. Like Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj are like harvesting the result of some kind of a pious activities, but that's not the fact.
They were always there. They were always
Yashoda
there.
Maharaj, Yashoda Mai and Nanda Maharaj, they're eternally the parents of Krishna. But this is from Garga Samhita. Once the partial expansion of Nanda and Yashoda appeared in Svarga as the demigods Drona and Dhara. Drona was of the 8 Basus, and as a great devotee of Lord Vishnu, he ruled the kingdom in heaven. Because they were childless, Drona and Dhara went to Mount Mandara and implored Lord Brahma to give them the Supreme Lord as their son. Lord Brahma smiled and assured them that their desire will be fulfilled. When the time came for Krishna's Prakrat Lila on earth, Drona and Dhara appeared in Gokul in accordance with their previous desire. However, Krishna's eternal parents, Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, who were the original contour holes of Drona and Dhara, had also appeared in Prakat Raj, as they always do upon Krishna's descent. Thus, Drona entered the body of Nanda Maharaj, and Dhara entered the body of Yashoda Devi. In this way, when Krishna was finally born, Drona and Dhara were able to share the bliss of being his parents. So it's basically, they expanded, they separated, and then ultimately, when Krishna appeared, they merged together again.
Okay, that's interesting. That's quite. I didn't know that actually.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. Yeah, I mean, just like it was saying in the Bhagavatam, actually, however, that they did consult with Lord Brahma, and that's actually mentioned in the Bhagavatam. Actually, they did consult with Lord Brahma, and they did. But they did. It's not that they asked his permission. Out of etiquette, they might have done that, but in the sense they were already kind of eternal parents as well at the same time. So Drona and Dhara were still the eternal parents of Krishna. They still had that eternal ras with him. It's not that Lord Brahma granted it. It was existing before they consulted Lord Brahma, before they obviously... It's good stuff. It's like an onion, isn't it? Not to talk too much about onions, but it's like there's many, many layers. You can go deeper and deeper and deeper, like that. Okay, so I think we'll stop there. Thank you for everyone's patience and participation. So, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai.